The scent of frying bacon pulled Thomas Larkin from sleep like a hook through water, dragging him from dreams of plowed fields and autumn harvests into confusion, so complete he thought for a moment he had died and woken in some stranger's home. He sat up in bed, cotton nightshirt twisted around his chest, and listened to the sounds drifting through the thin walls of his farmhouse. The crackle of grease, the scrape of a spatula against iron, humming that carried a melody he had never heard before. Thomas swung his legs out of bed and reached for his trousers, pulling them on with hands that shook slightly. He was a man of 32 years, weathered by sun and labor, with brown hair that fell past his collar and a beard he kept trimmed short. His farmhouse sat at the edge of the Greywood frontier, 3 days' ride from the nearest town, and in the 5 years since he had built it with his own hands, he had never once woken to the smell of someone else's cooking. He padded barefoot across the rough wooden floor, passing the simple furnishings he had made himself. A chair, a table, shelves holding books and dried herbs. The door to his main room stood ajar, and through it he could see movement, a figure at his stove with green skin that caught the morning light streaming through his single window. Thomas stopped in the doorway and stared. An orc woman stood at his stove, barefoot on his kitchen floor, tending a pan of bacon with focused attention. She wore a simple dress of rough spun cloth that fell to her knees, patched in several places and stained with travel dirt. Her hair was black as coal and hung in a thick braid down her back. Even from behind he could see the breadth of her shoulders, the muscled curve of her arms, the way she stood with the balance of someone trained to fight. She turned slightly to reach for something, and he saw her face in profile, strong features, a jaw that suggested determination, and small tusks that curved up from her lower lip. She could not have been more than 20 years old, if orcs aged anything like humans did. Thomas cleared his throat. The orc woman whirled around, the spatula raised like a weapon, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. Her eyes were amber, bright and wild with something between fear and defiance. She had a bruise along her left cheekbone, dark purple against the green of her skin, and her knuckles were scraped raw. "Who are you?" Thomas asked, keeping his voice level. "What are you doing in my house?" The orc woman lowered the spatula slowly. "I am called Kerra," she said, and her voice carried an accent he could not place, rolling the R's and clipping the vowels short. "I came in the night. You did not wake. That does not answer my question about what you are doing here." Kerra gestured at the stove. "Making breakfast. The bacon will burn if I do not attend it." She turned back to the pan and flipped the strips with practiced ease. "You had eggs also. I found them in the cold box, and bread, though it was going stale." Thomas stepped into the room, moving slowly as he might approach a skittish horse. "You broke into my home to cook breakfast." "I did not break anything." Kerra cracked eggs into the pan one-handed, each motion efficient and sure. "Your door was unlocked. In my clan, an unlocked door is invitation. This is not your clan. This is human land. I am aware." Something bitter crossed her face, gone so quickly Thomas almost missed it. "I am very aware of where I am human." Thomas pulled out one of his kitchen chairs and sat down, watching her work. Now that the initial shock had faded, he could see details he had missed. The way her dress hung loose on her frame as though she had lost weight recently, the shadows under her eyes, the careful way she moved as though favoring her left side. "Are you hurt?" Kerra's shoulders stiffened. "I am well enough to cook." "That is not what I asked." She was silent for a long moment, tending the eggs. Finally she said, "I have bruised ribs. They will heal." "How did you get bruised ribs?" "Fighting." She slid the eggs onto a plate, added bacon, and turned to face him. "I fought, I lost, I left. That is all you need to know." She set the plate on the table in front of him, then went back for another. "Eat. The food is good." Thomas looked down at the plate. The eggs were cooked perfectly, the yolk still soft, the bacon crispy at the edges. His stomach growled despite his confusion. "You made 2 plates. I am hungry also." Kerra sat down across from him with her own plate and picked up a piece of bacon with her fingers, biting into it with those small tusks. She closed her eyes briefly, savoring it. "I have not eaten in 3 days." 3 days. Thomas felt something shift in his chest. "You have been wandering the frontier for 3 days without food, 4 days without food, 3 days wandering." Kerra opened her eyes and looked at him directly. "I found your farm yesterday at sunset. I watched your house to see what manner of human lived here. You went to bed early. You checked your animals before sleeping. You spoke kindly to your horse, so I thought perhaps you would not kill me if I came inside. I do not make a habit of killing people in my kitchen. I am not people. I am orc." Kerra said it flatly, without emotion, as though stating a simple fact like the color of the sky. "Many humans would kill me for that alone." Thomas could not argue with that. He had grown up in the Eastern Territories where the war with the orc clans had raged for generations. He had seen things during his time in the militia that still woke him sweating in the night. But he had also seen enough of war to know he wanted no more of it, which was why he had come west to the frontier to build a life away from all that blood and hatred. He picked up his fork and took a bite of egg. It was perfectly seasoned with salt and a touch of wild herbs. "This is very good." Kerra's expression softened slightly. "My mother taught me to cook. She said a woman who could not feed herself and her family was no woman at all." "Your mother sounds wise. She is dead." Kerra said it without inflection, but her hands tightened on her fork. 6 months now. I am sorry." Kerra shrugged, a gesture that seemed to pain her ribs. "She died in battle as a warrior should. There is no shame in it." She ate in silence for a moment, then added, "But I miss her still." They finished breakfast without speaking further, the only sounds the scrape of forks on plates and the morning birdsong outside. Thomas watched Kerra eat and saw the careful way she rationed each bite, making the food last, as though she could not trust that there would be more. It reminded him of his first winter on the frontier when his crops had failed, and he had survived on rabbit stew and determination. When the plates were empty, Kerra stood and gathered them before Thomas could move. She carried them to his wash basin and began cleaning them with the same focused efficiency she had brought to cooking. "You do not have to do that," Thomas said. "I used your food in your kitchen. I clean." Kerra scrubbed at a plate. "It is fair trade." Fair trade would have been asking permission first. Kerra's hands stilled in the water. "If I had asked, would you have said yes?" Thomas opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Would he have let an orc woman into his home if she had knocked on his door in the night? He wanted to believe he would have, that he was better than the prejudices he had been raised with, but he honestly did not know. "I thought not," Kerra said quietly, and went back to washing. Thomas stood and moved to the window, looking out at his farm. 20 acres of cleared land, a barn, a chicken coop, fields planted with wheat and vegetables. He had built all of it himself, seeking peace and solitude after years of violence. He had not expected that peace to be interrupted by an orc woman cooking breakfast in his kitchen. "Why did you leave your clan?" he asked. Kerra was silent for so long he thought she would not answer. Then she said, "I refused a marriage." Thomas turned to look at her. "They exiled you for that." "The man I refused was the chief's son." Kerra set the last plate on his drying rack and wiped her hands on her dress. "He challenged me to combat for the insult. I accepted. I thought I could win. But you did not. I broke his arm and cracked 3 of his ribs." A fierce pride entered Kerra's voice. But he broke my ribs also, and in the end he pinned me. By clan law, that made me his." She touched her bruised cheek. "I left before the wedding could take place. His father said I had dishonored the clan. He gave me until sunset to disappear, or he would kill me himself." Thomas felt anger kindle in his chest, hot and sudden. "He would kill you for refusing to marry someone. He would kill me for losing the combat and then fleeing rather than accepting the consequences." Kerra met his eyes. "In my clan, honor is everything. I have none now. I am clanless, nameless by their reckoning. But you told me your name is Kerra. That is what my mother called me, but without a clan I have no right to any name." She said it with a bitter twist to her mouth. "That is orc law. That is a cruel law. Many laws are cruel. They exist anyway." Kerra moved past him to the window and looked out at the farm. "You have built something good here. The land is well tended. Your animals look healthy. You work hard. Hard work is all I know. And you live here alone. No wife." "No children," Thomas shook his head. "Just me." Kerra was quiet for a moment, her amber eyes scanning the fields. "I will make you an offer, human. Let me stay for 1 week. I will work for you. I am strong. I can plow and plant and harvest. I can hunt and cook and mend. I will earn my food and shelter, and at the end of the week I will leave and you will never see me again. And if I say no, then I will leave now and you will still never see me again." Kerra turned to face him. "But I will likely die in the wilderness because I have no supplies and no clan to return to. So I am asking you, human to orc, farmer to wanderer, please, give me 1 week to rest and heal and gather my strength. That is all I ask." Thomas looked at her and saw the pride it cost her to ask for help, to stand in a stranger's kitchen and beg for mercy. He thought about the war, about all the orcs he had fought and the ones he had killed. He thought about the reasons he had come to the frontier, to escape the cycle of violence, to build instead of destroy, to find some kind of peace in a world that seemed to have none. "You can stay," he said. Relief flickered across Kerra's face, there and gone in an instant. "Thank you. But there are conditions. You do not go into my bedroom without permission. You tell me if someone comes to the farm looking for you, and if you are going to use my kitchen, you clean up after yourself." "Agreed." Kerra nodded once, sharp and formal. "I will not be a burden. You can sleep in the barn. There is a loft with clean hay and blankets. It is warm enough." Something unreadable crossed Kerra's expression. "The barn is fine. I have slept in worse places." Thomas wanted to ask what places, what she had endured to get here, but he could see the exhaustion in the lines of her body. "You should rest. Those ribs will not heal if you keep pushing yourself." "I will rest when the work is done." Kerra rolled her shoulders back, wincing slightly. What needs doing today? Against his better judgment, Thomas found himself listing the tasks. The vegetable garden needed weeding, the chicken coop needed fresh straw, there was firewood to split and fences to mend. Kerra listened to it all with the attention of a soldier receiving orders, nodding at each item. "I will start with the garden," she said, and headed for the door. Thomas watched her go, this strange orc woman who had appeared in his kitchen like something from a fever dream. He had the distinct feeling that his quiet life on the frontier had just become considerably more complicated. The day unfolded with an unfamiliar rhythm. Thomas went about his usual tasks, checking the irrigation channels, feeding the livestock, examining his wheat for signs of blight or pest damage. But always he was aware of Kerra's presence, the green-skinned figure moving through his garden with tireless determination. She worked like someone trying to prove something, he noticed. Even with injured ribs, she pulled weeds with brutal efficiency, her strong hands tearing through the encroaching grass and thistles. By midday, the garden looked better than it had in weeks. neat rows of vegetables standing clear in the dark earth. Thomas brought her water from the well and found her sitting on the ground, breathing hard, one hand pressed to her side. "You are pushing too hard," he said. Kerra took the water and drank deeply before answering. "I am earning my keep. You are going to hurt yourself worse. I have had worse injuries." But she did not get up immediately, and Thomas noticed the way she held herself, protecting those damaged ribs. He sat down beside her on the grass, looking at the garden. "My wife used to tend this," he heard himself say, surprising himself with the words. "She had a gift for growing things. Everything flourished under her care." Kerra glanced at him. "Where is she now?" "Dead. 5 years ago, before I came west." Thomas pulled up a blade of grass and twisted it between his fingers. "Fever took her one winter. I could not save her." "I am sorry," Kerra said, and she sounded like she meant it. They sat in silence for a while, two people carrying their losses like stones in their pockets. The sun beat down warm on Thomas's shoulders, and somewhere in the distance a hawk cried out. "Why do you live so far from other humans?" Kerra asked eventually. "Because I am tired of people." Thomas let the grass blade fall. "I spent 10 years in the militia, fighting in the Eastern Territories. When my wife died, I realized I had spent my whole life surrounded by death and violence. So I came here to find something different." "Did you find it?" "I found quiet. I found work that builds instead of destroys. Whether that is enough, I do not know yet." He looked at her. "What will you do after this week?" Kerra's jaw tightened. "Head further west. There are lands beyond the human territories where no clans venture. Perhaps I can make a life there." "That is hard country. Dangerous." "Everywhere is dangerous for an orc without a clan." Kerra pushed herself to her feet, moving carefully. "At least in the wilderness, the only thing trying to kill me will be animals and weather. That is simpler than politics." She went back to work, and Thomas let her, knowing that some people needed to keep moving or the weight of their thoughts would crush them. He had been like that himself in the months after his wife's death, working until his hands bled and his body screamed for rest, anything to avoid sitting still with his grief. That evening Thomas made dinner, a simple stew of rabbit and vegetables. He called Kerra in from the barn where she had been mucking out stalls, and she came to the house with hay in her hair and dirt on her dress. "You do not have to invite me to eat with you," she said from the doorway. "Would you prefer to eat alone in the barn?" Kerra hesitated, then shook her head. "No." "Then come in and sit down." They ate together as the sun set beyond the window, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Kerra ate with the same careful rationing as breakfast, making each bite last. Thomas found himself wondering when she had last felt truly safe, truly fed, truly at ease. "This is good," Kerra said. "You cook well." "I have had practice. 5 years of feeding myself teaches a man to cook or starve." Thomas ladled more stew into her bowl without asking. "Eat. You need to regain your strength." Kerra looked at the full bowl, then at him. "Why are you being kind to me? Why would I not be? I am orc. You are human. We are supposed to be enemies." Thomas set down his spoon. "I have had enough of enemies, have you not?" Kerra did not answer, but something in her expression shifted, a wall coming down just slightly. She ate the second bowl of stew, and Thomas saw her shoulders relax incrementally. After dinner, Kerra washed the dishes again, and Thomas brought out a worn deck of cards. "Do you know any games?" "Cards are for humans and gamblers." "Then I will teach you." Thomas shuffled the deck. "It will pass the time." They played as darkness fell fully outside and Thomas lit candles to see by. Kerra learned quickly, her sharp mind grasping the rules and strategies with ease. She won 3 hands out of 5, and when she took the last trick she smiled, a real smile that showed her tusks and lit up her whole face. "You let me win," she accused. I did not. You are a natural at this. I am a natural at winning. But she said it with humor, and Thomas found himself smiling back. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with Kerra. Her eyes drooped and she swayed slightly in her chair. Thomas stood and gestured toward the door. Go to the barn and sleep. Tomorrow will come soon enough. Kerra rose slowly, moving like every muscle ached. At the door she paused and looked back at him. Thank you, Thomas Larkin. For the food and the shelter and the card games, you did not have to show me kindness. Neither did you have to cook me breakfast this morning. Yet you did. That was different. That was payment in advance. Then consider this payment in advance also, for the work you will do tomorrow. Thomas met her amber eyes. Now go rest before you fall over. Kerra nodded and slipped out into the night. Thomas watched from the window as she crossed the yard to the barn, her figure outlined briefly in moonlight before she disappeared inside. He sat for a long time after she left, thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. An orc woman in his barn, eating at his table, weeding his garden. If anyone from his militia days could see him now, they would call him a traitor or a fool. But then, those people had not known him as anything other than a soldier. They had not known about his wife, about the dreams he had harbored of a different life. Thomas blew out the candles and went to bed, falling asleep to the knowledge that for the first time in 5 years, he was not alone on his farm. The days developed a pattern. Kerra rose before dawn and worked until sunset, pushing herself relentlessly. Thomas tried to get her to rest more, but she was stubborn as stone, insisting on earning every scrap of food and shelter. She repaired fences, hauled water, split enough firewood to last through winter. Her ribs were healing. He could see it in the way she moved with increasing ease. But more than the work, Thomas noticed the small moments between tasks. The way Kerra would stop to watch a butterfly land on a flower, wonder crossing her face. How she hummed while cooking, wordless melodies from her clan's traditions. The care she took with his animals, speaking to them in her own language with a gentleness that made something ache in his chest. On the 4th day, Thomas brought his horse in from the pasture and found Kerra in the barn, grooming the animal with long, sure strokes. You are good with horses, he observed, my clan-bred war horses. Kerra ran her hand down the mare's neck. I grew up around them. This one is well trained. You have done good work. Her name is Maple, for the trees that grew near where I bought her. Thomas moved to help, taking a brush and working on Maple's other side. Were you a horse trainer in your clan? I was a warrior. Kerra said it with pride. One of the best. I fought in 16 battles before my 20th year. Thomas's hand stilled. 16. Our clan was small. We had to fight often to keep our territory. Kerra's voice went distant. My mother was war chief. She taught me everything, sword, spear, bow, hand-to-hand combat. I was supposed to lead our warriors after she died. What happened? The chief's son happened. Toruk. Kerra spat the name like poison. He decided he wanted me as his wife, not because he loved me, but because a war chief's daughter would give him status. When I refused, he made it a challenge of honor. I should have seen the trap, but I was angry and proud. You said you broke his arm. I did. And I would do it again. Kerra's hands tightened on the brush, but he was larger, stronger. In the end, strength won over skill, and when I would not accept the marriage even after losing, his father declared me clanless, dishonored. Thomas came around the horse to face her. There is no dishonor in refusing to marry someone you do not want. In my culture there is. Kerra met his eyes. A challenge was made. I accepted. I lost. By law, I should have submitted. But I could not bear the thought of being owned by Toruk, of spending my life as his property. So I ran and became nothing. You are not nothing. What am I then? Kerra's voice rose slightly, pain breaking through. I have no clan, no name, no place in this world. I am an orc among humans who hate my kind, and I can never return to my people. I am less than nothing, Thomas. I am a ghost." Thomas reached out and took her hand, the one clenched around the brush. Her skin was warm under his touch, calloused from work. "You are a woman who chose freedom over bondage. That takes more courage than any battle." Kerra stared at him, her amber eyes wide. For a moment neither of them moved, standing there in the dim barn with only the horse between them. Then Kerra pulled her hand away, but gently, without anger. "You speak kind words," she said quietly, "but words do not change reality." "No, but they can change how we see reality." Thomas stepped back, giving her space. "You have 3 more days of your week. Have you given thought to what comes after?" "I think of nothing else." Kerra went back to grooming Maple, her movements mechanical now. "But I have no answers, only more wilderness to wander." Thomas wanted to say something, to offer some solution, but what could he offer? His farm was no place for an orc, isolated as it was. Eventually, someone from town would visit, would see her, and then there would be questions he could not answer. It was dangerous for both of them. But the thought of Kerra leaving, of her walking off into the wilderness alone to face whatever fate awaited her there, made something twist painfully inside him. That night at dinner, Thomas brought out a map he had of the Western Territories and spread it on the table. "There are settlements here," he said, pointing to marks along the frontier. "Far enough from civilization that they care less about what you are and more about whether you can work. If you went to one of them, claimed to be a refugee from the war, you might find a place." Kerra studied the map, tracing the routes with one finger. "How far?" 2 weeks on foot, less if you had a horse." "I have no horse." Thomas hesitated, then said, "You could take Maple." Kerra's head snapped up. "I cannot take your horse. You need her for the farm." "I can buy another horse next time I go to town. You need her more than I do right now." He met her eyes. "Consider it payment for all the work you have done this week." "I cannot accept such a gift." "Then consider it a loan. When you are settled somewhere, send her back to me." Kerra shook her head slowly. "You would trust me with your horse, an orc you have known for 4 days." "Yes," Thomas said simply. "I would." They looked at each other across the map, and Thomas saw emotions war in Kerra's expression. Pride, gratitude, confusion, something else he could not name. Finally she said, "I will think about it." The next day brought rain, a steady downpour that turned the yard to mud and made outdoor work impossible. Thomas found Kerra in the barn, restless and pacing like a caged animal. "Come inside," he called from the house door. "No sense in both of us being miserable." Kerra hesitated, then dashed across the yard, arriving at his door soaked and dripping. Thomas handed her a towel and she dried off, wringing water from her braid. "I hate rain," she muttered. "It makes me feel trapped." "Then let us be usefully trapped." Thomas gestured to a pile of his clothes that needed mending. "Can you sew?" "Of course I can sew." "What kind of question is that?" "A practical one, since I cannot sew to save my life." Thomas produced a needle and thread. "These have needed repair for months." They sat together by the window, mending clothes while rain drummed on the roof. Kerra worked with quick, neat stitches, repairing tears and replacing buttons with practiced ease. Thomas attempted to fix a torn shirt and made such a mess that Kerra finally took it from him with an exasperated sound. "You are hopeless at this. I never claimed otherwise. How have you survived 5 years alone if you cannot mend your own clothes, poorly and with many drafts?" Thomas watched her work, admiring the skill in her hands. "What else did your mother teach you?" Kerra was quiet for a moment, threading her needle. "She taught me to fight, to cook, to heal wounds with herbs and poultices. She taught me the history of our clan, the names of our ancestors, the proper rituals for honoring the dead." She taught me that strength without wisdom is just violence, and that a true leader serves their people before themselves. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. Kerra's voice went soft. She was everything I wanted to be, strong, wise, respected. And then she died, and I learned that none of those things matter if you are dead. They matter to the people you leave behind. Do they? Kerra looked up at him. My clan has already forgotten me. Within a generation, no one will remember my mother's daughter who refused to marry and ran away. I will be a cautionary tale, nothing more. I will remember you, Thomas said. The words hung in the air between them. Kerra stared at him, needle frozen mid-stitch, and Thomas felt his heart beating too fast in his chest. He had not meant to say it, but now that he had, he knew it was true. However this week ended, he would remember Kerra, her strength, her pride, her determination to keep going even when everything had been taken from her. Why? Kerra asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas could not answer that, did not have words for the tangle of feelings in his chest, so instead he said, "Tell me more about your mother. What was her name?" Kerra's expression softened. "Gracia. It means iron heart in the old tongue." And she began to speak, telling stories of her mother's battles and wisdom, of the clan she had led for 30 years. Thomas listened, and in listening, learned more about the world Kerra had lost. The rain continued all day and into the night. When evening came, Thomas made dinner and they ate by candlelight, the storm outside making the house feel even smaller, more intimate. Kerra told him about Orc traditions, their festivals and rituals, the complex honor codes that governed their lives. Thomas shared stories of his own childhood, growing up on a farm much like this one before the militia had called him away. "You have family still?" Kerra asked. "A brother in the Eastern Territories. We do not speak." Thomas refilled their cups with water. "He thought I was a coward for leaving the militia, for refusing to keep fighting. We exchanged harsh words. I have not heard from him in 5 years. That must be lonely." "It is, but it was my choice." Thomas met her eyes. "Like your choice to leave was yours." "Sometimes the right choice is still a lonely one." Kerra nodded slowly. "Yes, sometimes it is." That night, as Kerra prepared to return to the barn, Thomas found himself saying, "You could sleep in the house. The floor by the fire is warmer than the barn loft." Kerra turned to look at him, surprise clear on her face. "You said I should stay in the barn." "I did, but that was when you were a stranger. You are not a stranger anymore." "What am I then?" Thomas considered the question. "A guest. A friend, maybe." Something complicated crossed Kerra's expression. "Orcs and humans are not friends. Then perhaps we are the first." Thomas gestured to the hearth where he had already laid out blankets. "The offer stands. Take it or not as you wish." Kerra looked at the blankets, then at the door to the rainy night, then back at Thomas. "I will stay," she said finally. "Thank you." She settled by the fire while Thomas went to his bedroom, but he found sleep elusive. He lay awake listening to the rain and the occasional shift of Kerra moving on the floor, and wondered what he was doing. In 3 days she would leave, would walk out of his life as abruptly as she had entered it. The thought sat heavy in his chest. Somewhere in the darkest hours of the night, Thomas heard a sound that brought him instantly awake, a soft, choked gasp that could only be pain or tears. He rose and padded silently to his bedroom door, peering out. Kerra sat by the dying fire, her knees pulled to her chest, face buried in her arms. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Thomas should have gone back to bed, should have given her privacy for her grief. Instead, he found himself crossing the room and sitting down beside her. "Kerra." She looked up, and in the firelight he saw tears streaming down her green cheeks. "I am sorry. I did not mean to wake you. You did not wake me. I could not sleep." Thomas sat close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "What is wrong?" "Everything." The word broke on a sob. "I miss my mother. I miss my clan, even though they cast me out. I miss having a place in the world, a purpose, a future. And I am afraid, Thomas. I am so afraid of what comes next, of dying alone in the wilderness like a hunted animal." Without thinking, Thomas put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. Kerra stiffened for just a moment, then collapsed against him, pressing her face into his shoulder while she cried. He held her, one hand smoothing over her braided hair, and let her weep. "You are not going to die in the wilderness," he said quietly. "I will not let that happen. You cannot stop it. You cannot change what I am. I do not want to change what you are." Thomas tightened his hold on her. "Kerra, listen to me. You are strong and skilled and brave. You will survive this because that is what survivors do. They keep going even when it seems impossible. You kept going after your mother died. You kept going after your clan exiled you. You will keep going after you leave here because you are too stubborn to do anything else." Kerra laughed, a wet sound against his shoulder. "You think I am stubborn? I know you are stubborn. I have watched you work yourself to exhaustion every day to prove a point. The point being that I am worth something. You do not need to prove that to me." Thomas pulled back enough to look at her face, using his thumb to wipe tears from her cheek. "I already know you are worth something." Kerra stared at him, her amber eyes bright with tears and firelight. "Why are you so kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness." The truth of it settled in Thomas's chest. Because in another life, another world, we might not have been enemies. We might have been friends, or something more. The words were out before he could stop them. Kerra went very still, her eyes searching his face. "Thomas, I know. It is impossible. You are leaving in 3 days, and I will likely never see you again. But I needed you to know that this week has mattered to me. You have mattered to me." He let his hand drop from her face. "I am sorry if that makes things harder." Kerra reached up and caught his hand, holding it between both of hers. "It does make things harder, but I am glad you said it anyway." She hesitated, then added, "This week has mattered to me also. You have shown me that not all humans hate orcs, that kindness can exist between our peoples. I will carry that with me, wherever I go." They sat together by the dying fire, hands clasped, while the rain continued outside. Eventually, Kerra's breathing evened out and she fell asleep, her head resting on Thomas's shoulder. He stayed awake, holding her, memorizing this moment because he knew he would never have another like it. When dawn came gray and wet, Thomas gently extracted himself and returned to his bed. He heard Kerra wake later, heard her moving quietly around the house, but he pretended to still be asleep. Some things were too complicated to face in the harsh light of morning. The 6th day dawned clear and bright, the rain having washed the world clean. Thomas went about his morning chores and found Kerra already at work, mucking out the barn with fierce concentration. She did not mention the previous night, and neither did he, but there was a new awareness between them, a tension that had not existed before. That afternoon, a rider appeared on the road to Thomas's farm. Thomas saw him first, a man on horseback riding hard from the direction of town. He called to Kerra and she emerged from the barn, going tense when she saw the rider. "Get in the house," Thomas said quietly. "Stay out of sight. If there is trouble, there will not be trouble if they do not see you. Please, Kerra, trust me." Kerra hesitated, then nodded and slipped into the house. Thomas walked out to meet the rider, a young man he recognized from town named Peter from the general store. "Thomas Larkin," the rider called. "That is me. What brings you out this way?" Peter dismounted, his face flushed with excitement and something that might have been fear. "There is a manhunt on, or orc hunt, I suppose. A group of orc warriors came through town yesterday asking about a fugitive from their clan. A woman, green-skinned, scarred hands, traveling alone. The sheriff has organized a search party. I am riding to all the outlying farms to warn people and see if anyone has seen anything. Thomas kept his expression neutral, though his heart raced. Orc warriors came to town. 5 of them, led by a big bastard named Toruk. Said the fugitive is a criminal who dishonored their clan and stole valuable property before fleeing. They have permission from the territorial governor to search for her. Peter looked around the farm. You have not seen any sign of an orc woman, have you? Not a trace. The lie came easily. It is just me out here. Well, keep your eyes open and your rifle loaded. The sheriff says she is dangerous, trained to kill. Peter remounted his horse. If you see anything, fire 3 shots and the search party will come running. I will do that. Thomas watched Peter ride away, waiting until he was out of sight before returning to the house. Kerra stood by the window, her face pale beneath the green. They have come for me. Toruk and 4 others. They are telling people you are a criminal and a thief. I am neither of those things. I know that. Thomas began to pace, thinking quickly. You cannot stay here. If they search the outlying farms, they will find you. Then I will leave now. Kerra moved toward the door, but Thomas caught her arm. Wait. If you leave now, in broad daylight, the search party might spot you. You need to wait until dark, leave under cover of night. He looked at her. Can you fight 5 warriors if they catch you? Not with healing ribs. Maybe 1 or 2, but not 5. Not Toruk. Kerra's hands clenched into fists. I should have known he would come after me. His pride could not bear that I escaped. Then we make sure you escape again. Thomas went to his bedroom and returned with a bundle. Supplies, food, a blanket, a hunting knife. When night falls, you take Maple and ride west. Do not stop until you are 3 days away from here. The settlements I showed you on the map, head for those. Kerra took the bundle, her eyes bright. Thomas, I cannot repay you for this. I do not want repayment. I want you safe. He gripped her shoulders. Promise me you will not stop. Promise me you will get as far away from here as possible. I promise. Kerra covered his hands with hers. But what about you? If they find out you helped me, they will not find out. I saw nothing. I know nothing. I am just a farmer living alone. Thomas managed a smile he did not feel. I am very good at being unremarkable. They spent the rest of the day in tense waiting, jumping at every sound. Thomas prepared Maple for travel, packing supplies into saddlebags while Kerra watched the road for any sign of riders. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Thomas brought the horse to the house. It is time, he said. Kerra emerged from the house, the bundle of supplies in her arms. She had changed into the cleanest of her clothes and braided her hair tightly. She looked like a warrior preparing for battle, except that this battle would be running away. I am ready. Thomas helped her secure the supplies to Maple's saddle, showing her the route on the map one last time. Follow the river west until you reach the mountain pass. There is a settlement called Riverside just beyond it. Tell them you are a refugee from the border wars. They do not ask too many questions. I understand. Kerra mounted the horse, settling into the saddle with the ease of someone who had grown up riding. She looked down at Thomas, and he saw 1,000 unspoken words in her eyes. Thank you, she said finally, for everything. For the kindness and the shelter, and for not turning me away when you could have. I will never forget you, Thomas Larkin, nor I you. Thomas reached up and squeezed her hand. Ride safe, Kerra, and do not look back. Kerra nodded, tears shining in her eyes. She kicked Maple into motion, and the horse started forward, breaking into a canter as they left the farm. Thomas watched her go, watched until she was just a dark shape against the darkening sky, and then nothing at all. He stood in his yard for a long time after she vanished, feeling the emptiness of his farm settle around him like a shroud. Then he went inside, sat down at his empty table, and allowed himself to grieve for something he had barely begun to have. The search party came 2 days later. Thomas was working in his field when he heard the horses. 6 men rode up to his farm, led by a hard-faced sheriff named Marcus Trent. Behind them came 5 orc warriors, mounted on massive war horses and armed to the teeth. The largest of them was clearly Toruk, broad-shouldered, scarred, with tusks that jutted up past his upper lip. "Thomas Larkin," Sheriff Trent called out, "we need to ask you some questions." Thomas set down his hoe and walked over, keeping his expression curious but unconcerned. "Sheriff, what is this about? We are searching for a fugitive orc woman. These warriors say she is dangerous and may have come this way." Trent gestured to Toruk. "Tell him what she looks like." Toruk's eyes were cold as he studied Thomas. "Female, young, green skin, black braid, scarred hands. She is a thief and a coward who fled my clan after stealing valuable property. If you have seen her, speak now." "I have seen no one," Thomas said calmly. "I live alone out here. The only visitors I get are folks from town every few months." "You are certain?" Trent pressed. "No sign of anyone passing through. Tracks, evidence of camping, anything?" "Nothing. Though I admit I do not spend much time looking for such things. I am usually too busy with the farm." Toruk dismounted and walked past Thomas toward the house. "I would like to search your property." "Do you have the authority to do that, Sheriff?" Thomas asked. Trent looked uncomfortable. "The territorial governor granted them search rights for the manhunt. I am just here to make sure things stay civil." Thomas stepped aside, gesturing at his house and barn. "Search all you like. You will find nothing because there is nothing to find." The orc warriors tore through his property with brutal efficiency, checking the house, the barn, the chicken coop. They found nothing except the evidence of a single man living alone. 1 set of dishes, 1 bed, 1 of everything. Toruk stood in the middle of Thomas's kitchen, his eyes scanning every detail, and Thomas forced himself to meet that gaze without flinching. "Your horse is gone," Toruk said finally. "I sold her to a trader passing through 3 days ago. I needed the money for supplies." The lie was smooth, well-rehearsed. He was heading west. What did this trader look like? Human man, maybe 40 years old, brown beard, riding a wagon, did not give his name. Toruk's eyes narrowed. "You are lying." "I am not, and I do not appreciate being called a liar in my own home." Thomas crossed his arms. "I have cooperated with your search. If you have found no evidence of your fugitive, then perhaps she went a different direction entirely." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Toruk took a step toward Thomas, his hand moving to the axe at his belt, but Sheriff Trent quickly interposed himself. "That is enough. We have searched the property and found nothing. Time to move on to the next farm." Trent looked at Thomas. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Larkin. If you see anything suspicious, you will report it immediately." "Of course, Sheriff." The search party left, Toruk casting one last suspicious glare at Thomas before mounting his horse. Thomas watched them ride away, his heart hammering in his chest, and only when they were completely out of sight did he allow himself to breathe. She had gotten away. Kerra had escaped. Thomas returned to his work, but everything felt hollow now. The farm seemed too quiet, too empty. He found himself listening for the sound of Kerra humming in the kitchen, looking for her in the garden, expecting to see her in the barn tending the animals. But she was gone, disappeared into the wilderness, and he had no way of knowing if she had made it to safety. The days passed slowly. Thomas worked his fields, tended his animals, went through the motions of his solitary life. But at night he lay awake, wondering where Kerra was, if she had reached Riverside, if she was safe and warm and fed. The not knowing was a special kind of torture. 2 weeks after the search party's visit, Thomas rode into town for supplies. He kept his ears open for any news of the manhunt, but the talk had shifted to other things. The upcoming harvest, a wedding, politics from the Eastern Territories. No one mentioned orcs or fugitives. At the general store, Peter rang up his purchases and said casually, "Heard that orc hunting party went back east empty-handed, gave up the search." Thomas kept his expression neutral. "Is that so?" "Yep. Sheriff said they looked for 2 weeks and found nothing. Guess that fugitive got away clean." Peter shook his head. "Between you and me, I hope she made it. Any woman running from a forced marriage deserves a chance." "I did not know it was about a forced marriage." "Oh, sure. Some of the orc warriors got drunk at the saloon and talked. Seems this woman refused to marry their chief's son and beat him bloody when he challenged her. I figure a woman with that much spine deserves her freedom." Thomas paid for his supplies and left, feeling something loosen in his chest. Toruk had given up. Kerra was safe, at least from pursuit. But knowing she was safe did not make his farm feel less empty. Summer turned to autumn. The wheat ripened and Thomas harvested it, working alone from dawn to dusk. He hired help from town for the threshing, men who asked no questions and left when the work was done. The garden produced abundantly, and Thomas canned and dried food for winter, making far more than one man needed from simple habit. On cold nights, he sat by the fire and thought about Kerra. He wondered if she was warm, if she had found work in Riverside, if she ever thought about the week she had spent on his farm. He told himself it was foolish to dwell on someone he had known for such a short time, but the heart did not follow the rules of logic. Winter came early that year, bringing snow in November. Thomas spent his days tending livestock and repairing equipment, preparing for the long, cold months ahead. The isolation that had once been a comfort now felt like a burden. He had grown used to solitude after his wife's death, but Kerra's presence had reminded him what it was like to share space with another person, to talk and laugh and simply exist alongside someone. On the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, Thomas stood at his window watching snow fall and made a decision. He would go west in the spring. He would take what he could carry and ride to Riverside. He would look for Kerra, and if he found her, he would ask if there was a place in her new life for an aging farmer who had been fool enough to fall in love with an orc woman he had known for 1 week. And if he did not find her, or if she had no interest in seeing him again, he would at least know. The not knowing was worse than any answer she could give. The decision made, Thomas felt lighter than he had in months. He began planning what to take, what to sell, how to close up the farm so it would not fall to ruin in his absence. When spring came and the roads were passable, he would leave. But spring came early in the form of a knock on his door in late February. Thomas was cooking dinner when he heard it, 3 sharp raps that sent his heart racing. He moved to the door, hand on the knife at his belt, and called out, "Who is there?" "Someone very cold and very wet," came a familiar voice. "Will you let me in, Thomas Larkin, or must I freeze on your doorstep?" Thomas yanked the door open. Kerra stood there, covered in snow, wearing a thick wool cloak and fur-lined boots. Her face was thinner than he remembered, her eyes tired, but when she saw him a smile broke across her face. "Hello, farmer," she said. Thomas could not speak. He simply reached out, grabbed her hand, and pulled her inside, slamming the door against the cold. "You came back," he managed finally. "I came back." Kerra pushed back her hood, revealing her black braid now threaded with small wooden beads. "I made it to Riverside. I found work as a blacksmith's assistant. I saved money. I made a life." She looked at him, her amber eyes bright. "And I was miserable, because every day I thought about a farm on the frontier and the man who showed me kindness when the world had shown me none. Kerra, Let me finish. She held up a hand. I told myself I was being foolish. That you were human and I was orc, and there was no future in such things. I tried to forget you. I failed spectacularly. She took a breath. So I decided to come back, to see if perhaps you had thought of me even a fraction as much as I thought of you. And if you had not, I would leave and never trouble you again. But I had to know. Thomas crossed the space between them in 2 strides and kissed her. Kerra made a small sound of surprise, then kissed him back, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. She tasted of snow and the road and something wild and wonderful. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thomas pressed his forehead to hers. I have thought of nothing but you since the day you left, he said. I was planning to come looking for you in spring. I could not stand the thought of never seeing you again. Kerra laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Thomas had ever heard. Then we are both fools, the best kind of fools. Thomas pulled back enough to look at her face. Stay, not for a week, not for a month, stay forever. Help me run this farm. Build a life with me. I do not care what anyone else thinks or says. I want you here. People will talk. They will say terrible things about us. Let them talk. We are far enough from town that their words cannot reach us. Thomas cupped her face in his hands. I am asking you to marry me, Kerra. I know it is too fast, too strange, too complicated, but I am asking anyway. Tears spilled down Kerra's cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Thomas Larkin. I will stay on this farm and build a life with you and face whatever comes, as long as we face it together. They kissed again, longer this time, sealing the promise. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, 2 people who had been lost found themselves in each other's arms, and it felt like coming home. The wedding happened in early spring, performed by a traveling priest who asked no questions and accepted Thomas's coin with a knowing smile. They stood in the farmyard at sunset, just the 2 of them and the priest, and spoke vows that promised forever. Kerra wore a simple dress she had sewn herself, dyed green to match her skin, and flowers in her braided hair. Thomas wore his best shirt and trousers, his hands shaking as he slipped a ring onto Kerra's finger. It was made of wood, carved during the long winter nights, but Kerra looked at it as though it were made of gold. I love you, Thomas said, his voice rough with emotion. I love you, Kerra replied, her tusks showing in a wide smile. My husband, my wife. They kissed as the sun set, painting the sky the same colors it had been the night Kerra had ridden away. But this time she was not leaving. This time she was staying. The seasons turned, and Kerra became a part of the farm as essential as the earth itself. She tended the animals with gentle expertise, worked the fields with tireless strength, and transformed the house into a home with small touches. Woven baskets, dried flowers, her mother's cooking pot that she had carried all the way from Riverside. They faced challenges, of course. A group from town came to investigate rumors of an orc living at the Larkin farm. Thomas met them at the property line with Kerra at his side and a rifle in his hand. This is my wife, he said calmly. She lives here because this is her home. If that is a problem for anyone, they are welcome to take it up with me personally. The group looked at Thomas, looked at Kerra standing tall and proud beside him, and looked at the rifle. They left without incident, and no one from town bothered them again. Traders passing through would sometimes stop at the farm, and some would stare at Kerra, but most simply wanted to do business. Thomas and Kerra became known as the couple who lived at the edge of the frontier, the human and the orc who had built something beautiful together. A year after their wedding, Kerra came to Thomas while he was mending a fence and said, I am pregnant. Thomas dropped his hammer. What? Pregnant, with child? You are going to be a father. Kerra's smile was radiant. I did not know if it was possible, human and orc, but apparently it is. Thomas swept her into his arms, laughing, tears streaming down his face. We are going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby, Kerra agreed and kissed him. Their daughter was born in the autumn during the harvest season. She came into the world screaming, with green-tinged skin and her father's brown eyes and tiny tusks that were barely visible. They named her Grace, for the grace that had brought her parents together. Thomas held his daughter in his arms and looked at Kerra, exhausted and beautiful in their bed, and felt his heart overflow with love so profound it hurt. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For coming back. For staying. For building this life with me." Thomas kissed Grace's forehead. "For everything." Kerra reached for his hand. "You gave me back my life when I had lost everything. You gave me a home, a family, a future. I should be thanking you." "Then we will thank each other," Thomas said. "Every day for the rest of our lives." As the years passed, the farm prospered. Thomas and Kerra worked side by side, raising Grace and later her two brothers, building something that would last beyond them. The children grew strong and healthy, inheriting their mother's strength and their father's stubbornness, and the prejudices of the wider world could not touch them here. In this place, their parents had made safe. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Thomas and Kerra would sit on their porch and watch the sunset paint the sky in colors of fire and gold. They would hold hands and remember that morning so many years ago when Thomas had woken to the smell of breakfast and found an orc girl cooking barefoot in his kitchen. "You ever regret it?" Thomas asked once. "Giving up your clan, your people, everything you knew?" Kerra leaned her head on his shoulder. "I gave up a clan that did not value me for a family that does. I gave up a life of war for a life of peace. I gave up being alone for being with you." She turned to look at him. "I regret nothing, neither do I." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a life together through love and determination. The world might not understand them, might never accept them, but that did not matter. They had each other, they had their children, they had this farm and this life. They had everything that mattered. And in the farmhouse kitchen, barefoot on the wooden floor she had scrubbed 1,000 times, Kerra hummed the same melody she had hummed that first morning while cooking breakfast. It was a song from her mother's clan, a song of coming home. She was home now. Finally, truly home, and she would never leave again.